And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, elected in 2022. Before that, of course, was the attorney general of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Governor Shapiro, good to see you. Congratulations on a little over a year anniversary.
Thank you, Dean. It's great to be back with you, and congrats on all your success with your show. And I'm grateful for the chance to talk to you about the progress we're making here in Pennsylvania.
You've had a lot of success with probably nothing more than Saquon Barkley signing with the Philadelphia Eagles.
And
Did you have something to do with that? Was that you?
that was a great signing, and it's always good to take something off of somebody in your division. Would have been a little better if we could steal something from the Cowboys. I hate the Cowboys, but Giants are a close second.
As a Giant fan, if you take anyone else, we're building a wall, okay, between the states.
Oh,
And
now you want to build that
we're going to
wall,
build,
huh?
but
Look at
Trump's
you,
civil
Dean.
fine, Trump's civil fine. He had to pay $400 million here in New York. It's going to pay for
I
the wall. So Trump's going to build a wall.
I don't I actually don't know what the hell the Giants were thinking. I mean, I think it's a great pickup for us. He's a premier running back.
I,
By the way, a great Penn State guy. So he
yeah,
came up in a wonderful system at Penn State. I mean, he's a hell of a horse that we're going to ride, and I'm excited.
well, the Giants owners like to lose. So continuing with
There you
that,
go.
we got lucky twice in my lifetime with Super Bowl championships. So let's talk about, first of all, what's it been like? You've been governor. I know you were AG, so you
Yeah.
served for statewide before. But on a personal level, what's it like being governor of Pennsylvania now for over a year?
Yeah. I mean, just sort of issues aside and all that stuff aside, Dean, I got to tell you, it's incredibly humbling. Like it's maybe not the emotion you'd expect, right?
Mhm.
But I'm humbled by like the trust that so many people put in me. Over 3 million people voted to give me the chance to do this work. And I'm humbled every day when I'm out in communities. I was in northeastern Pennsylvania earlier today in like the Scranton area, and you bump into folks who are just so hopeful for what your plans are and grateful for the leadership that you've shown. And I guess, yeah, this might sound corny, but like you'd think that would make you kind of beat your chest and you know, feel all big and whatever. But the reality is it just makes me feel humble, and it makes me feel both grateful for the chance to do this work and super mindful that we've got so much more work to do. And so the job has made me more humble and more focused and determined than ever before to just get shit done and solve problems.
I think it's a testament to who you are, that it humbles you as opposed to make you. And one day you'll be a humble president, perhaps. We'll see. But one day, who knows, right? So let's, okay, that's for another day. Let's talk about Pennsylvania. Unemployment, historic lows, 3.4% in your
Yeah.
state. How
Yeah.
did you get it there? And it's staying there for an extended period of time. What are the policies? And also, have the Biden policies, infrastructure bill and other things, have they helped?
We're coming at this in so many different ways. Look, I'm focused on creating opportunity and real freedom in Pennsylvania. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure someone's got a good, well paying, stable job in their community. We've done that in a number of ways through our economic development work that we've done through our ability to grow our unions and build up our middle class, through the work we've done to secure private capital. And just my first year as governor, we brought in $1.2 billion in private capital that's led to
Wow.
job creation. And importantly, we've had tremendous help from the Biden administration investing in those foundational pieces that create economic opportunity, whether it's investing in roads and bridges, investing in high-speed internet in communities, especially in our rural areas that don't have it, investing in our hospitals, investing in doing away with lead pipelines, lead drinking water lines,
Mhm.
so that now you've got pipes coming into your homes that are free of lead. They're doing so much of that important foundational work. Pennsylvania secured 2 regional hydrogen hubs. It's going to make us really the center of action on clean energy in the United States for generations to come. I mean, there's just so much investment the Biden administration has made in and around Pennsylvania that's also helped. So I think it's a combination of our GSD attitude, our get stuff done attitude. It's the effort we've put into economic development that's created jobs. And it's the incredible support we've had coming from the Biden administration to complement all of this work.
And I saw that today you were in Scranton, and President Biden, of course, known from being from Scranton for
Yeah.
the cap carbon emissions from power plant new program,
Yep.
PACER. What can you tell us about that? How would this work in your state?
I announced a cap and invest initiative today, one that has actually politically, lowercase p politically, brought together labor unions, environmentalists, industry. Those are three groups that haven't exactly seen eye to eye on this. Understanding that if we have a Pennsylvania based, Pennsylvania centric, Pennsylvania only cap and invest initiative, we can create jobs,
Mhm.
lower energy costs, and really have Pennsylvania be a leader on energy again in this new clean energy economy. So I think this allows us to be far more competitive. 20 years ago, we were leading the nation in clean energy, and we have fallen behind over the last 20 years as other states have passed policies, incentives, what have you. It's time for us to catch up. Dean, I'm competitive as hell. I want to win. I want Pennsylvania to win, and I think clean energy is an area we're going to win on, and that's why the policies I put forth are going to help us do that.
But you're a good competitive. As Secretary of Commonwealth Al Schmidt told us today, but in a good way. And that was about democracy and making sure people can vote and being secure in knowing their vote's going to count. And that's fundamentally important. And just to touch on that about strengthening democracy, I know that you started a task force to deal with election threats and that Al Schmidt, the Commonwealth Secretary, is the head of it. What are you preparing for in 2024, given what your state went through in 2020 with Donald Trump?
So, Dean, we were just talking about economic opportunity,
Right.
creating jobs, whether it's creating jobs or investing in our kids' schools, you name it. Any policy that we're focused on, any effort that we're trying to get done, it doesn't work if you don't have a strong foundation of democracy. If you don't have that direct connect between the voters and the candidate they choose to lead them, if you don't have people having faith in our institutions. And that's why it's critically important that here in Pennsylvania, which is, arguably the swingiest of all swing states in the nation, I think it's probably a fairly bipartisan statement to say that as Pennsylvania goes, so will go the presidential election. It is obviously, my position on that. I'm strongly supporting Joe Biden. But
Mhm.
I think what people in Pennsylvania want to know, more so than the candidate that they are for, is they want to know that whoever they're for, their vote will count and that the will of the people will be respected and protected. And sadly, the former president has been hell bent on eroding that faith in our institutions. Hell, he tried to overturn the will of the people in Pennsylvania last time, so much so that he and his allies took me to court over 40 times to stop votes from being counted, to stop certain people from being heard. By the way, Dean, they lost every single time they took me to court. We won every single time, and the will of the people was protected. Now, why do we have this task force to focus on election integrity? Because we know that the former president is going to be at it again, trying to
Mhm.
undermine our institutions and thwart the will of the people. And so I tasked we call it the Secretary of the Commonwealth, the person who oversees our elections here in Pennsylvania, Al Schmidt, who's a member of my cabinet, who is a great American. I mean, truly a man who puts country first. Someone who had a similar role in the city of Philadelphia in 2020, and he counted the votes. He made sure that they were, that they reflected the will of the people. And notwithstanding withering criticism from Donald Trump, notwithstanding threats that came to him and his family from Donald Trump and his offspring, Al did the right thing. He is a man of impeccable integrity and credentials. And so I've asked him to lead a multi-agency working group for us, law enforcement, those who operate our elections, those who work with the community, to make sure that no matter who you're for in this election, that we're going to make sure the will of the people is protected and that the votes will be counted. And I have all the confidence in the world that Al's going to do it. And democracy is central to the foundation that we need to build upon to attack all the other issues, from climate change to education, economic development, you name it.
I agree. And I'm chatting with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. So, Governor, as a candidate, we talked numerous times about your work you would do to protect reproductive freedom for women.
Yeah.
And I know that you're working with a Freedom Alliance with 21 other governors. What more can you share about what's going on to ensure women have a right to self-determination and a fundamental civil right?
When I ran for governor, you and I spoke a lot during that campaign. I was very outspoken about being a pro-choice candidate for governor. I had a long history of being a pro-choice elected official. But when Donald Trump packed the Supreme Court and used that court to overturn Roe v. Wade in what is known as the Dobbs decision. In effect, they sent all of this back to the states. We've seen neighboring states around us, West Virginia as an example, that have taken away a woman's right to choose. And I think folks have learned that it is critically important who your governor is, because your governor is going to determine whether or not women have freedom here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or in some other state. And so I've made it clear that I'm going to stand on the side of freedom. I'm going to stand on the side of women in this Commonwealth and make sure that if they want to have an abortion, they can have an abortion. I think abortion is health care. And so I have worked to make sure that in our budgets and in our regulations and in the other work that we do, we are routinely defending women's right to choose and beating back attempts to undermine it, giving women the resources they need to find out where they can access reproductive health care, ending contracts with entities that were restricting women's rights. These are the things that I've been proud that we've led on over the first year. And as you mentioned in your question, I'm part of a coalition of over 20 governors from across the country. We're similarly focused on protecting reproductive freedom, and I'm proud to be in this work, doing this work with them.
In the big picture, when you take a step back, right now there are 14 states that ban abortion at day one of conception, meaning there are millions of women forced against their will to carry a fetus to term. And I can't believe that's where we are. Like, forget politics. It's like the idea that women have lost this fundamental right guaranteed by the Supreme Court since 1973. And women of today have less rights than women in 1973 when Roe v. Wade was decided.
Yeah.
And how concerning is that? And where do you see other Republicans, even in your state, talking about what their next frontier is in terms of controlling women or taking away rights from women?
Look, I view this as a father of a 22-year-old daughter. It breaks my heart that she was born into a world where she had more rights than she does today as a young woman. I'm determined, at least here in Pennsylvania, to make sure she continues to have those rights and have those freedoms. This has been part of a larger effort, pardon me, part of a larger effort by extremist Republicans led by Donald Trump to control women and their bodies and restrict their fundamental freedoms. I sure as hell won't let them get away with it here in Pennsylvania. And you know who else isn't letting them get away with it, Dean? The voters of Pennsylvania. Voters routinely, when this issue has been on the ballot, have stood on the side of freedom, have stood on the side of reproductive rights. In fact, obviously in my race, I was running against one of Donald Trump's offspring who was incredibly extreme on the issue. And we blew him out. In fact, I set a record for the number of votes ever in a governor's race. I don't say it's pat myself on the back. I say that because what that number showed was not just Democrats coming to the polls, but Republicans and independents as well, coming together to support freedom and to support a woman's right to choose. Just a year later, in our Supreme Court race, we elect Supreme Court justices here in the Commonwealth. The fundamental issue on the ballot between the Republican who was opposed to a woman's right to choose and the Democrat who strongly supported it, that was the fundamental question seemingly on voters' minds when they went to vote. And the Democrat won. We've seen other examples in the state legislature where the Democrats who stood on the side of reproductive freedom won, and the Republicans who were extreme on the issue lost. And so this is an issue I see as a dad. This is an issue I have fought for and won on as a governor. And then this is an issue, when I look at it as a political leader in this Commonwealth and across the country, I see voters routinely coming out and standing up for freedom and standing up for the rights of women all across Pennsylvania and all across the United States.
Absolutely. And it's a fundamental issue because it's a fundamental right. And this is where we are as a nation. Another thing that I saw that you and the Shapiro-Davis budget, the new budget, proposed investments, $100 million in a new office to deal with gun violence, which is so greatly needed to be reduced across this nation. The idea that that's acceptable, over 100 people die a day involving a gun, some from suicide, some from murder, and that we have the so-called pro-life party, which does nothing to reduce this number. So what are you doing in Pennsylvania to save lives?
So, Dean, we're coming at this in a number of different ways. And I think the first thing that's important to say is that it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to live in a society where there are mass shootings seemingly every day. We just had 8 kids gunned down at a bus stop in Philadelphia. Literally, they left school and they were waiting to just go home, to do their homework, to go play sports, whatever they were about to do. 8 kids. It doesn't have to be this way. And there are lawmakers who choose to do nothing in the face of this violence, in the face of this carnage and death. And those who choose to do nothing are turning a blind eye to the death and destruction in our communities. I'm choosing to do something about it. As governor, we are establishing an Office of Gun Violence Prevention. I think we're the second state in the nation or something like that to do it. We have proposed to invest another $100 million in community organizations that focus on violence prevention, particularly focus on helping our youth not pick up a gun in the first place, let alone pull that trigger. $100 million is a lot of money. And so think church organizations, civic groups, you name it, the dollars flowing to them. And we have increased our policing budgets. One of my first acts as governor was to grow our complement of our Pennsylvania State Police by over 400 state troopers. And I've come back to lawmakers this year in my next budget and asked for an additional 4 cadet classes, about 400 new state troopers. I'm not suggesting that policing alone is going to address this, but we got to come at this in a number of different ways. Policing, money for violence prevention initiatives, and of course, make the necessary long-term investments that are going to help, especially our young people, and that is investing in our schools. I've proposed an historic level of funding for our public schools to make sure every child of God gets a fair shot, and every child of God gets a chance to live in a safe community. We do not need to accept this. We have passed in the House of Representatives here in Pennsylvania, and I've said I would sign universal background checks for all gun purchases in our Commonwealth. Unfortunately, the Senate, that's led by Republicans, has refused to act on that. Again, by refusing to act, they are saying they are okay with the level of violence that we are seeing in our communities. I am not okay with that. They need to act, and they need to close those loopholes that allow criminals to get their hands on guns. So we're coming at this in a multitude of ways, and it's critically important that we have success in those areas and save lives.
And I so applaud the way you frame that, because you're acting because this is not acceptable loss. This should not be the normal in America. So
No.
you're doing some great stuff in Pennsylvania. Do you still need federal legislation, though, to help you in that? Because guns are transportable, as we know, they go over state lines. Is there a need for closing the background check loophole,
Of course.
or any other federal legislation that might help? The
We'd
magazine
love to see.
capacity, AR-15 ban, along those lines?
Yeah, pardon me. I didn't mean to speak over you, Dean.
No.
We would love to see more action at the federal level, and we've seen some real promising work by the Biden administration. One of the things that I sort of, blew the whistle or raised the flag, whatever the right saying is, as Attorney General, noting that more and more criminals were using ghost guns as a way to bring violence into our communities, and called on the Biden administration to do something to regulate it. The good news is they did. They acted through their ATF. They've done a lot, but they're also dealing with a Republican House and a Senate that still has this filibuster rule. And so it makes it almost impossible right now to pass any other meaningful gun legislation. I know that there are senators and representatives working incredibly hard on that, but we've got more work to do in that space. What I'm not going to do as the governor of Pennsylvania is wait on the Congress of the United States to act. We're acting now, and we're focused on addressing the violence here.
It's fundamentally important. And I'm chatting with the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. So, Governor, I saw that you announced a blueprint for higher education. And it was interesting to see how on that write-up that in the past, Pennsylvania had invested in education, but for years, it seems like the state hasn't for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
Tell us about the blueprint and what's going on in your state that you see this need.
Yeah. Look, we are literally 49th in the nation in investment in higher education. And Dean, just for you and your listeners and viewers, you want to be 1, not 50. Okay. So 49 is bad, man. You don't want to be 49.
No, not good.
And at the risk of nerding out on you and giving you too much on this, I'll just tell you that the investments I proposed would take us from 49th to 22nd in the next 5 years. We've got to invest in higher ed. And I will also cap the cost for any college student in Pennsylvania making median income or less. We will cap the cost at $1,000 a semester, no more than that. We think it's critically important that we have a strong higher education set of institutions here in Pennsylvania that are accessible and that are affordable. I've also proposed that we pay for performance. Let me explain what that means. Instead of just writing a blank check to a college, think Penn State University is an example. We would instead write a check to Penn State University, more than what we're writing now, but that would be focused on performance and outcomes. For example, just as an example, we should incentivize universities to take first-generation college students, give more people access to higher ed, and we should pay a college that does that more. We should incentivize colleges for when they graduate a student, having them go into fields that we desperately need people to go into. Think nursing, teachers, things like that. So we want to actually incentivize the performance of these universities. The last thing I'll just say is I want to be clear that we've got to respect everybody's path to opportunity in Pennsylvania. For those that want to go into the workforce, we've got to make sure that there's more VOTEC in our high schools, and we are doing that so they can learn the trade skills they need. We're funding more union apprenticeship program. We put 6,000 new Pennsylvanians into apprenticeship programs just last year as a result of the work that we've done. And we've got to treat that pathway for those who go into the trades, as an example, with the same level of respect that someone who goes to college. Similarly, someone wants to go to the military. We want to embrace that. We want to treat that with respect. And so what I'm trying to do here in Pennsylvania is make sure that every Pennsylvanian has the freedom to chart their own course and the opportunity to succeed, no matter what path they go down on, and they go down. And for someone who wants to go down the path of college, we just need to make that more affordable and accessible. And that's what my blueprint for higher education does here in the Commonwealth.
Investing in education is investing in your state in so many ways, and the workforce, their productivity, just people's lives, having a fuller life, because it's great that it's not just one thing or the other. It's all different paths and the investment. So last thing, Governor, you did mention Pennsylvania is probably the way Pennsylvania goes, the way the nation goes in 2024. How is Pennsylvania looking for, this is more a political question, granted, but for President Biden looking about, we're 230 plus days out from the election?
Well, let's just first set the stage, and I'll talk about the president. I mean, understand our last two presidential races were both settled by less than 100,000 votes. 2016 came down to 44,000 votes here, and 2020 came down to just over 80,000 votes. So, like, I don't think it's sort of breaking news for me to say it's likely going to be close, right? Now, I think President Biden has the advantage, not only because he won Pennsylvania last time, but because he's delivered for us here in the Commonwealth. We talked before about the incredible investments that he's made on infrastructure that's allowed our economy to be as strong as it is. He's routinely stood up for freedom and the rights of women to make decisions over their own bodies, stood up for our LGBTQ community. While Donald Trump and his offspring have been out attacking trans kids, we've seen President Biden treating those children as they should be, with real humanity. We saw the type of chaos that Donald Trump brought to our system of government, brought to our society every single day. I don't think the good people of Pennsylvania want to return to that type of chaos. I don't think we want to see that kind of chaos back in our living rooms every day, the kind of chaos that isolated us as a nation and didn't allow us to solve problems the way President Biden has done. So I'm going to be out doing everything in my political power to support the president. I'm confident that he's going to do well here in our Commonwealth, but I'm also mindful we got a lot of work to do. I know that there's a lot of political pundits out there that are expressing a whole lot of worry, and a lot of Democrats worry. Here's what I would say. Stop worrying and start working. These elections aren't won automatically. You got to work for it. I'm going to do everything in my political power to work for it hard here in Pennsylvania for the president and return him to the White House.
And you could bring Saquon Barkley on the campaign trail now that you have him. You stole him from us. That
if
I think
Saquon wants to campaign with me, I'd love to go around with
that would be great. Well, Governor Shapiro, it's great seeing you again. Congratulations on the great first year plus. And hopefully we can chat in the fall as we get closer to election day to see what the temperature is in Pennsylvania, and also how your policies are working out about 6 months from now. So
I'd love to.
Great chatting with you. Have a great day.
Thanks. Take good care.